Have you ever wondered, what if the person you match with isn't who they say they are? What if a simple swipe right pulls you into a nightmare you can't escape? Tonight, you're going to hear 3 real Tinder stories. Stories so chilling, they will freeze your blood and haunt your dreams. But here's the question. How close are you to your own Tinder nightmare? Are you ready to find out what happens when the perfect match turns into the perfect horror? Stay with me, because these aren't just stories. They are warnings. Our first story begins with Lisa, a young woman living in Chicago. Like many of us, she turned to Tinder hoping to find a connection, someone real, someone genuine. That's when she matched with Jake. Jake was everything Lisa thought she wanted. Charming, funny, and kind. He had that easy smile that made her heart flutter. His messages were thoughtful, and every date felt like the start of something special. At first, Jake was perfect. Attentive and caring, he listened like no one else had before. After just a few dates, Lisa found herself thinking about him constantly, her friends noticing a new glow about her. But little did she know, something was hiding beneath Jake's perfect surface, something dark, waiting to be uncovered. One chilly Friday evening, after a late dinner at a cozy restaurant downtown, Jake suggested Lisa come back to his apartment. He said he wanted to show her something special. Lisa hesitated for a moment. Something deep inside told her to be cautious. But the warmth she felt from Jake made her agree. When Lisa arrived at Jake's place, something felt off. The building was old, the hallway dimly lit and strangely quiet. She pushed the door open, stepping inside his apartment. But instead of the welcoming light she expected, the room was dim, almost shrouded in shadows. The air felt heavy, thick with a strange silence that made her skin crawl. Jake was standing by the window, his usual smile replaced by something colder, darker. He turned to face Lisa, eyes sharp, almost unreadable. Without a word, he led her deeper into the apartment, down a narrow hallway she hadn't noticed before. Then, he stopped in front of a door she hadn't seen on her way in. It was old, wooden, with a rusty lock. Jake pulled a small key from his pocket and held it out to Lisa. His voice dropped to a whisper as he said, "I want to show you something. But once you go inside, you'll never leave." Lisa's heart pounded so loud she thought he might hear it. She looked at the door, then back at Jake. Was this a joke? A test? Something in his eyes told her it was neither. It was real. Terrifyingly real. The question raced through her mind. What could possibly be behind that door? What kind of secret could Jake be hiding in his own home that was so dangerous, so twisted, that he warned her she wouldn't leave? Lisa's instincts screamed at her to run, but something held her there. Fear mixed with a dark curiosity. The kind of curiosity that traps you like a spider's web. She took the key in trembling hands and turned it slowly in the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. No light, just silence. "Go down," Jake said softly. "It's where everything started." Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She stepped inside, the cold air brushing against her skin like icy fingers. Each step down was heavier than the last, as if the darkness itself was pulling her deeper. At the bottom, it opened into a small, dimly lit basement. The faint glow came from a single bulb hanging overhead, flickering with an eerie buzz. The walls were lined with strange symbols, scratches, carvings, Shapes that looked like warnings made no sense to her. Center of the room stood an old trunk, locked tight and worn with age. Jake moved toward it, his hand steady but his expression unreadable. He bent down and unlocked the trunk with a second key. Lisa's eyes widened as he lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of photographs. Photos of Lisa, taken without her knowing, from places she never told anyone she visited. Some were close-ups of her face, peaceful and unaware. Others showed her from afar, walking home late at night, standing alone in a park, or leaving her apartment building. Lisa's blood ran cold. How did Jake get these? Who else had he watched? What was the purpose of this terrifying collection? Before she could ask, Jake's voice cut through the silence. I've been watching you for a long time. You don't really know me, Lisa. This isn't just about dating. It's about control, about making sure you never leave. Lisa stumbled backward, her mind racing. Was she trapped? How could she get out? The room felt smaller now, closing in like a trap. But the worst was yet to come. Jake stepped closer and pulled out a small, ancient-looking book. The cover was cracked, leather-bound, with strange symbols matching those on the walls. This, he said, is the key to everything. The power I've been using to keep people like you close, to make sure they don't leave. Lisa wanted to scream, to run, but her voice was caught in her throat. The fear, the disbelief, and a deep, dark helplessness wrapped around her like a cage. Why me? She finally whispered. Jake smiled, this time truly sinister. Because you're special, Lisa. And once you're inside this room, inside this story, you're part of something much bigger. Something that never ends. Lisa's mind screamed for escape, but the shadows around her seemed to stretch, to reach. The lock clicked behind her, the door sealing shut. And then, silence. What would you do if you were Lisa? Would you try to fight the darkness, or accept the nightmare waiting for you? The truth is, Lisa's story didn't end in that basement. It only grew darker from there. The locked room wasn't just a secret. It was a trap. A prison built on fear, control, and something far beyond what most of us understand. But what happened next? How did Lisa survive? Or did she at all? That's the story for another time. Our next story is about Mark. Just like many of us, Mark was looking for connection in the digital age. On Tinder, he matched with a woman named Emma. She was shy, quiet in her messages, but something about her caught his attention. Maybe it was the way she carefully chose her words, or how her photos seemed to hide a story she wasn't quite ready to share. Whatever it was, Mark felt drawn to her. Intrigued? They started chatting, slowly at first, but soon their conversations grew longer, more personal. Emma talked about books she loved, her favorite places, even her fears. Mark found himself wanting to know more about her. There was something fragile behind her words, something almost too real. Then one night, after days of messaging, Emma made a strange suggestion. She wanted to meet Mark in person, but not during the day, not at a coffee shop or restaurant. Instead, she asked him to come to a quiet park late at night, near midnight. Mark hesitated. Why meet so late? What could be so important that she couldn't meet earlier? His friends warned him, that's weird, don't do it. But the curiosity was too strong, and maybe, just maybe, he thought it might be worth the risk. So Mark agreed. That night, the air was thick with fog. The streetlights flickered as he walked toward the park, heart pounding. The silence felt heavy, the kind of silence that presses on your chest, makes every sound echo louder. When Mark arrived at the park, Emma was nowhere to be found. He looked around, calling her name softly. Only the wind answered. And then, something caught his eye. A small piece of paper pinned to the bark of a tree, fluttering in the breeze. Mark stepped closer and read the words written in shaky handwriting. "If you want to live, don't look behind you." His blood turned ice cold. Why would she leave this here? Was it a warning or a trap? Mark froze. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to run, but something held him there, paralyzed by fear and confusion. The question raced through his mind. What would happen if he looked? What dark secret was waiting just behind him? The seconds stretched endlessly. Then, despite every instinct screaming against it, Mark slowly turned around. There she was, Emma. But she wasn't the same Emma he had been talking to for weeks. Her eyes were empty, cold, black holes that seemed to suck in every light around her. There was no warmth, no soul, just a hollow, terrifying darkness. Her face was expressionless, like a mask hiding something far worse beneath. Mark's heart pounded. The person he thought he knew was gone. What had taken her over? Was it a curse, a possession, or something even more sinister? Frozen for a moment, Mark's mind screamed to flee. He ran, without looking back. But as he ran through the foggy park, a terrible thought clawed at his mind. Was he really free? Or had Emma's darkness followed him? Imagine for a moment. What would you do in Mark's place? Would you run blindly from the unknown, or stop and fight? How far would you go to escape something that isn't human anymore? Days passed. Mark tried to convince himself it was a nightmare, an impossible hallucination born from fear and exhaustion. But deep down, something gnawed at him, the feeling of being watched, the chill that crept up his spine whenever he was alone. At night, Mark's dreams were invaded by the same empty eyes, staring at him from the darkness. Whispers echoed around his room, soft, sinister voices he couldn't understand, but that filled him with dread. One night, Mark woke to a cold breath on his neck. He snapped on the light, but the room was empty. He wanted to believe it was all in his head, but every instinct screamed danger. Was Emma's dark side still with him? Was it hunting him, waiting to pull him back into the nightmare? Mark couldn't escape the question haunting his every thought. How do you fight something that's no longer human? How do you protect yourself from a darkness that lives inside the one you loved? You might be wondering, could this really happen to anyone? What if the person behind the perfect profile is hiding something far worse than a lie? Mark's story is a warning, a chilling reminder that sometimes, when we reach out for connection, we don't just open our hearts. We open doors to the unknown, and that unknown can be deadly. So I ask you, next time you get a message on Tinder or any dating app, and someone asks you to meet in the dark, alone, late at night, will you listen to that voice inside telling you to walk away? Or will curiosity trap you, just like it trapped Mark? Our last story is the most terrifying of all. It's about Sophie. Sophie was like many of us, searching for connection in a world that sometimes feels cold and distant. One day she met Tom on Tinder. Tom was charming, mysterious in a way that made Sophie curious. Their conversations were filled with laughter, secrets, and promises of adventure. Weeks passed, and their bond grew stronger, like a thread weaving them closer. Then one day, Tom invited Sophie to spend a weekend with him at a cabin in the woods. It sounded like a perfect escape, a chance to get away from the noise of the city, to breathe fresh air, to be together without distractions. Sophie said yes. She didn't know what she was stepping into. When Sophie arrived, the woods were eerily silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence you expect in nature, but a heavy, unnatural quiet that wrapped around everything like a shroud. The trees stood still, their shadows stretching like long fingers. The cabin looked old, isolated, a lone house swallowed by the forest. The air was thick, almost too still. That first night, Sophie tried to shake off the strange feeling creeping up her spine. But as she lay in bed, she began to hear things. Soft noises. Whispers carried by the wind that sounded almost like words. But she couldn't make them out. Her heart beat faster when she heard footsteps outside, circling the cabin. Not the footsteps of an animal, but slow, deliberate, human. Something was out there, watching, waiting. She grabbed her phone, hoping for a message from Tom, or at least a light in the darkness. But there was no signal, no way to call for help, no escape. Then, the lights went out. The cabin plunged into darkness, so complete, it felt alive. Sophie's breath caught in her throat as she realized Tom was nowhere to be found. The person she trusted was gone, vanished without a word. Alone, trapped inside the silent cabin, Sophie felt the darkness creep closer. Not just the absence of light, but something more. Something watching. Something waiting for her to make a move. What was Tom hiding? Why had he brought her here? And who or what was outside the cabin door, just beyond her sight? Have you ever been somewhere so quiet, so isolated, that the silence itself felt like a presence? Have you ever felt completely alone, but still somehow watched? That's Sophie's nightmare. Sophie tried to steady her shaking hands. She lit a candle, its small flame flickering in the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the wooden walls. But the shadows seemed to move, stretching and twisting like they had a life of their own. She thought she heard a whisper again, this time clearer, soft and almost seductive. "Don't be afraid." Her heart leapt. Was it Tom or something else? The footsteps started again, closer this time, circling, pacing, never stopping. Sophie pressed herself against the wall, eyes wide, willing herself to stay silent. The fear was suffocating. She wanted to scream, but her voice was stuck. Her mind raced. What if Tom was the danger? What if this was all a trap? She remembered the messages, the charming texts that had seemed so innocent. Now they felt like lies, masks hiding something terrible. Can you imagine that feeling? The dread of realizing the person you trusted might be the one who put you in danger. The nightmare of being trapped in a place where no one can hear your cries? Sophie searched the cabin desperately for anything that could help. A phone, a weapon, anything. But there was nothing. The cabin was bare. Then she heard it. A faint sound coming from outside the window. A slow, dragging noise, like something being pulled across the ground. She looked out, but saw nothing in the darkness except the twisted shapes of trees. The silence returned, heavy and unbearable. She was alone, but the feeling of eyes on her was stronger than ever. Her mind fought to hold on to reality, but the terror was overwhelming. Was this real? Or was the darkness playing tricks on her mind? What would you do if you were Sophie? Would you wait for morning? Or try to escape into the unknown darkness? Hours passed, but Sophie's nightmare didn't end. Suddenly, the door creaked open just a crack. A cold breeze swept inside, carrying a whisper, a voice she recognized. "Come outside, it's time." But there was no one there. The woods seemed to breathe around her, alive with something ancient and hungry. Sophie knew one thing: whatever was out there, it wasn't just shadows. It was waiting to claim her. Have you ever wondered what you'd do if faced with true terror? When your survival depends on trusting your instincts or risking everything on hope. Sophie's story is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous places aren't in the wild woods, but in the people we let close. Tom's secrets were dark, too dark to ever understand fully. And for Sophie, the weekend that was supposed to be an escape became a fight to survive. If you ever find yourself alone in the woods, remember Sophie. Remember the silence that's too quiet. And remember, sometimes the darkness isn't just outside the door, it's inside. If you think these stories are scary, wait till you hear the full truth behind each one. Stick with me till the end. You won't believe what happened next. And before we dive deeper, hit the like button if you've ever had a creepy Tinder experience. Subscribe and ring that bell, because more real horror stories like these are coming your way. Now, ready to face your worst Tinder fears?